Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at direct registration of shares, DRS, and its potential suppression by regulatory bodies, like the SEC and DTCC.
And what makes this deep dive so interesting is we're going beyond just the basics of DRS.
Right, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the what is DRS because honestly our listeners are already pretty savvy when it comes to this stuff.
Exactly. So we're diving right into the evidence suggesting that there might be some forces at play trying to keep a lid on this whole DRS thing.
Yeah, kind of keep it under wraps.
Exactly.
Okay, so you already know that DRS is about taking those shares, getting them out of the broker's grubby little hands, and putting them right where they belong, directly in your name on the company's books.
That's the gist of it, yeah.
But what you might not know is just how much this seemingly simple act of taking control is really shaking things up.
It really is. If we try to look at it from a broader perspective, DRS is like pulling back the curtain, right? You're pulling back the curtain on all the wizardry happening on Wall Street.
You're exposing the man behind the curtain.
That's it. And it shines a light on just how much potential there is for manipulation out there. And more importantly, it gives investors like yourself a way to take back some of that control.
So let's talk about GameStop. Why has this company become like the poster child for the whole DRS movement?
Well, we got to rewind a bit, back to the short squeeze of 2021, right?
Oh yeah, the good old days.
Right. Retail investors, and I bet a lot of you listening were part of this, flocked to GameStop. They saw it as this battleground, this fight against hedge funds and all this perceived market manipulation that was going on.
They were ready to fight the system.
They were ready, and DRS became their weapon of choice.
And they were serious about it. I mean, over 70% of the float is estimated to be DRS, which is insane.
Yeah.
But what does that actually, mean for us? What are the real tangible benefits for GameStop shareholders specifically?
Okay, so let's break down those benefits. First up, you have increased shareholder power. By having their shares directly registered, GameStop investors have this direct line of communication to the company.
They're not just a number anymore.
Exactly. It gives them more influence, more say in corporate governance. They can vote on proposals, elect board members, actually make their voices heard.
That's got to feel good, right? Having that level of control.
Yeah.
You just don't get that when your shares are just sitting there with a broker.
It's like the difference between, owning your house and renting it.
I have a stake in what happens.
Exactly. You have skin in the game.
Yeah.
All right. Benefit number 2. Protection against naked short selling. So by removing shares from the DTCC's lending pool, DRS makes it harder, significantly harder, for institutions to short sell shares that they don't actually own.
So it's like taking away their ammo.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And this is a big deal because, a lot of GameStop investors believe the company has been a target of some pretty aggressive short selling.
They think some people have been trying to drive the price down artificially.
Right, and DRS helps protect against that. And lastly, benefit number 3, transparency and proof of ownership, maybe the most important one. With DRS, there's zero ambiguity about who owns those shares.
It's crystal clear.
Crystal clear. They're registered in your name on the company's books, period.
No funny business.
None whatsoever. But here's where things start to get really interesting, and this is what we're really going to dig into today.
This is where the plot thickens.
Exactly. Because as we've seen with the GameStop saga, when retail investors start to gain this level of control, this level of transparency, it can ruffle some feathers, let's just say.
People don't like it when you start messing with the established way of doing things.
Right. And there's evidence, some pretty compelling evidence, that suggests that there are efforts being made to try and suppress this whole movement.
Wait, hold on. You're saying someone might be trying to prevent people from directly registering their shares? Why on earth would they do that?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And there are a few potential motives we need to explore. One is concern over market stability. A high concentration of DRS shares can definitely impact liquidity, potentially lead to wider price swings, more volatility.
Gotcha. So the regulators like the SEC and DTCC, the guys who are supposed to maintain orderly markets, they might see this as a risk.
Exactly. It's this balancing act between protecting investors and keeping the markets from going haywire.
But is that the only reason? Could there be something else going on here, something a little more A little more sinister?
That's what we're going to get to. Let's look at the evidence. One of the most compelling pieces of the puzzle here is how GameStop has been reporting its DRS numbers in its SEC filings. It's a story that unfolds in 3 distinct phases.
Okay, I'm all ears. Walk me through it.
All right, so phase 1, back in 2021, when the DRS movement was really gaining steam, GameStop was very transparent about its DRS figures.
They were proud of it.
They were. The information was detailed, easy to find, and very prominently displayed in their filings.
It was like they were saying, look at what we're doing. Look at how many people are DRSing their shares.
Exactly. But then, as we moved into 2022, things shifted. The language became more opaque. The figures were buried deeper in the filings.
We were hiding it?
It almost felt like someone was trying to turn down the volume on this whole DRS thing.
Huh, that's strange. What happened between 2021 and 2022 that might explain that shift in reporting?
That's the question we're going to try to answer. And to do that, we need to look at phase 3, the current phase, which spans 2023 and 2024. This is where we see even more ambiguous language, potential capping of reported figures, and a noticeable lack of clarity compared to those early days of the movement.
Wow, that's pretty concerning. Are you suggesting that the SEC and DTCC, these regulatory bodies, are deliberately trying to obscure the DRS numbers? Why would they do that?
Well, it's important to understand their roles in the market. The SEC, their job is to protect investors, ensure fair play, and maintain market integrity. The DTCC, on the other hand, they're tasked with ensuring the smooth settlement of trades and safeguarding the overall financial system. They both have a lot of power, a lot of influence over how the market functions.
But could that power be used to stifle a movement that threatens the status quo, a movement that empowers individual investors and challenges the established financial order? I mean, this is starting to sound a little like a conspiracy theory, right?
Now, hold on. We're not jumping to conclusions here. We're just examining the evidence and asking tough questions. And to get a clearer picture, we need to dig deeper into the potential motives behind this apparent suppression.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are some reasons why someone might want to keep DRS under the radar?
Okay, so motive number 1. It all comes down to the impact DRS has on short selling mechanisms. Remember, when you directly register your shares, you're essentially taking them out of the lending pool that institutions rely on for short selling.
So you're cutting off their supply.
Precisely. And a lot of GameStop investors believe that short selling has been abused, weaponized, used against the company.
They're trying to manipulate the price.
Exactly. And DRS directly challenges that, makes it a lot harder to locate shares to borrow and short. And this could explain why some entities might be uncomfortable with the movement gaining traction.
So it's this tug of war between those who want to keep things the way they are, keep those short-selling practices going, and those who see DRS as a way to, to level the playing field.
That's a great way to put it. And this brings us to motive number 2. Institutional pressure.
Oh, here we go. The big guys.
Think about it. Large financial entities, hedge funds, they have a lot to lose if DRS becomes too popular. They rely on the current market structure, including short selling, to generate profits. Could this be why we're seeing these changes in reporting? Is this all just a coincidence, or is there something bigger at play here? You decide.
This is getting good. So we've got potential concerns about market stability, we've got disruption of these established short-selling practices, and now we've got maybe some behind-the-scenes pressure from big players who just don't like the way the wind is blowing. But are there any other reasons why someone might want to suppress DRS?
There's one more angle to consider, and that's systemic risk. If a large portion of a company's shares become, let's say, locked up through DRS, it creates a situation where there just aren't enough shares readily available for trading.
So there's not enough liquidity.
Right. And this can lead to unpredictable price swings and potential instability, and that instability could spill over into other parts of the market.
So it's a domino effect. One company becomes too illiquid, and it triggers a chain reaction across the entire system.
That's a valid concern, and it's something that regulators would naturally be wary of. Their job is to keep the markets running smoothly, and a massive shift towards DRS, well, they might see it as a threat to that stability.
This is a lot to process. So we've got these 4 potential motives: market stability, short-selling disruption, institutional pressure, and systemic risk.
What do they all mean for the future of DRS, especially for those GameStop investors out there? What happens if this suppression continues?
And that is exactly what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll examine the implications for GameStop specifically, the potential impact on you, the retail investor, and what it all means for the future of the DRS movement. So stay tuned. I'm hooked. This is getting really interesting. Stay tuned, everyone, because we're just getting started. Okay, so we've uncovered some pretty compelling evidence here that maybe, just maybe, there are some forces out there trying to put the brakes on the whole DRS movement. But let's get real here. What does this actually mean for you, the investor, especially those of you who have been diligently, DRSing your GameStop shares?
That's the question we need to answer. The potential consequences of DRS suppression, are pretty significant, and they could have this ripple effect across the entire market. One of the most immediate impacts, the one you'd feel first, is the erosion of transparency.
You mean like how GameStop is reporting its DRS numbers, that kind of thing?
Exactly. If this trend of making things unclear, obfuscation and ambiguity, if that continues, it becomes really difficult to track the movement's progress. Imagine trying to navigate a forest without a compass or a map.
You're lost.
You're completely lost. That's what it feels like when there's a lack of transparency in DRS reporting. You don't know what's going on.
And that lack of clarity, that can lead to a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt.
Right.
You're basically investing in the dark.
Exactly. You don't know what's real, what's not, or even if you're making a difference. And that uncertainty, well, that brings us to the second major consequence: disillusionment among retail investors.
People start to lose hope.
That's it. You see, the DRS movement is fueled by this belief, this core belief that individual investors can take back control, they can challenge the system. But if they start to feel like the system is rigged against them, that their efforts are being deliberately hidden, well, that belief can really crumble.
It's like the wind gets taken out of your sails.
Exactly. And that loss of momentum, it can have a chilling effect on participation.
People get discouraged.
They do. If investors start to believe that DRS is pointless, that the forces against them are just too powerful, well, they might just give up. And that's exactly what those who want to suppress the movement, that's what they want.
Classic divide and conquer.
You got it. You make people feel powerless, you make them feel isolated, and they're less likely to challenge anything. But it's not just about morale and participation. There are also some pretty serious legal and regulatory implications to consider here.
Things could get messy.
They could. You see, if regulators start to see DRS as a genuine threat, a threat to market stability or to the established way of doing things, they might actually take steps to formally, to curtail its growth or even restrict its use altogether.
So they could actually make it harder for people to DRS their shares. How would they even do that?
There are a few ways this could play out. They could impose caps on the percentage of shares that can be directly registered, which would make it impossible for movements like the one we're seeing with GameStop to really gain traction.
So they could basically put a limit on how many shares can be DRS.
Right. Or they could introduce stricter reporting requirements, making it more burdensome, more complex for investors to participate. Or, and this is a big one, they could impose fees, penalties on DRS.
So they'd make it expensive to DRS your shares.
Exactly. Make it financially painful.
Wow. That's kind of a scary thought, isn't it? It feels like we're headed towards this future where individual investors are, they're increasingly marginalized, their power is diminished, and their voices are silenced.
It's a possibility, and it's one we need to be aware of. The GameStop DRS movement, it's really highlighted this fundamental tension in the financial system.
This battle between the little guy and the big institutions.
That's it. The tension between the interests of individual investors and the interests of these powerful institutions. And how that tension is resolved, well, it's going to have far-reaching consequences for all of us.
So what can we do about it? What can investors do to protect themselves, to make sure their voices are still heard?
The first step, and this is the most important one, is to stay informed. Don't just rely on the mainstream media or official statements. You got to dig deeper, seek out alternative perspectives, and connect with other investors who are passionate about DRS. Knowledge is power, right?
So do your own research.
Yeah, exactly. The more you understand about the potential challenges, the threats out there, the better prepared you'll be to navigate them.
Be proactive, not reactive. Don't wait for someone to tell you what's happening. Figure it out yourself.
I like that. And don't underestimate the power of collective action. The GameStop saga has shown us that when individual investors unite, when they act together, they can move mountains, engage with online communities, participate in discussions, make your voice heard. The future of DRS, the future of finance, is being shaped right now.
It's happening as we speak.
And it's up to all of us to ensure that it's a future that works for everyone, not just a select few.
So, bottom line here, what's the key takeaway for our listeners as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive?
The GameStop DRS movement, it's at a crossroads. There's evidence, and we've seen it, that there are efforts being made to suppress it, to stop it from growing. And the consequences for investors, they're real. But this isn't a time for despair, it's a time for action. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, continue to challenge the status quo. The future of investing, it's in your hands.
Wow, that was a lot to digest. It's wild, isn't it? To think that just directly registering your shares could cause such a ruckus in the financial world.
Yeah, it really is.
But it makes you think, right? Is this whole GameStop DRS thing, is it just the tip of the iceberg? Could this be a sign of something much bigger happening, right under our noses?
That's a great question. And honestly, you might be right to think that the GameStop saga and this whole rise of DRS, it could be a canary in the coal mine.
A warning sign.
Yeah, like a warning sign. It could be signaling this broader power struggle, between retail investors who are armed with all these new tools and this thirst for transparency and, well, the established financial powers, the ones who have been in control for so long.
It's like David and Goliath, but instead of slingshots, we've got shares and blockchain.
That's a perfect analogy. It's a battle for control, for influence, for the future of finance, really.
And the stakes are high.
They are, because the outcome of this fight, it's going to have implications way beyond GameStop. It could reshape the entire investment landscape, it could redefine what regulators do, and ultimately it could decide who really holds the power.
The institutions or the people.
Exactly.
So what does this mean for us, the average investor? Where do we go from here? How do we stay ahead of the game, make sure our voices are heard?
The key here is to stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay engaged. You can't just sit back and hope for the best.
Don't be complacent.
Right. Don't just accept the official story, at face value.
Question everything.
Question everything, dig deeper, find those alternative sources of information.
Be your own financial detective.
I love that. Follow the money, connect the dots, and find out the truth.
Uncover the truth.
And remember, you're not in this alone. There's this whole community of investors out there who are passionate about DRS, who are fighting for change.
Yeah, find your tribe.
Find your tribe, share information, support each other. There's power in numbers.
GameStop proved that.
It did. It showed us that when individual investors come together, when they're united, they can shake things up. They can shake the foundations of the financial world. And that's a powerful reminder, a reminder that we, the investors, we have more power than we think.
Way more.
It all boils down to this. The future of finance, it's being written right now.
Yeah.
And it's up to all of us to make sure it's a future where transparency, fairness, and individual empowerment, they win.
Well said. This has been an incredible deep dive. I mean, just packed with information and the things to think about. Thank you so much for guiding us through this complex world.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the GameStop story, this whole DRS movement, it's not over yet.
It's just getting started.
Stay tuned, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Great advice. And until next time, keep diving deep.